if I walked into the gym with Jeffrey Verity Schofield or Bald Omni Man, um, or any of these guys, it's going to be a fun war, right? Because I know mentally they are at the hard training level. Training is really more art than science. Absolutely nothing but respect for Alex. He's like my son.
All right, so I want to kick things off talking about an old video you did on micromanaging every aspect of lifting. You mentioned that the issue is people get so obsessed with the minutia of each piece of the puzzle that they end up missing the main part, which is taking every set for as many reps as possible. Can you talk through if you still agree with this and kind of what your thoughts are on this topic in as much detail as possible?
Yeah, we're in a pretty interesting era. I mean, for those of you guys that don't know me, I've been involved with this for a very long time. I had a forum back in the day called Muscle and Brawn, which I'm no longer affiliated with, and I sold. And please don't go over there because it's owned by like fake steroid peddlers now. But I've been involved in this industry for like 20 years now. Had one of the most popular forums back in the day. And the only reason I want to set that as a platform is because I've seen it all, many, many times. And chasing the tree instead of the forest, chasing the minutia is very common, and missing the bigger picture. The bigger picture is something that I have dedicated my life's work to. What I find fascinating is not simply a specific workout protocol, but what I find fascinating about lifting, and I think it's the most fascinating aspect for me, is if you look back in the last 70 years of lifting, there are so many ways of training that can be successful. And, I like to look at the bigger picture, what I call my pillars of success, or what are the commonalities between all these programs. And that really is my focus when I do program design and when I help people. What is the big picture? So I'm a big picture guy. I'm not a minutia guy. I think we live in an era where everything is killing your gains, and we try to turn over every stone and look at every pebble instead of seeing the big picture. And the big picture is that training is really more art than science. And I'm not anti-science. I have a science background, but training is more art than science. And there's more flexibility than we can imagine. And it's not granular, and we don't need to obsess about the minutia. That doesn't mean we can't do supersets or rest pause or dog crap training or one set to failure. We just have to, understand that there is flexibility for all of these roads as long as we are training hard.
Yeah, so it seems like people kind of get stuck into what the latest fad is or what's quote unquote optimal, or focusing on like real specifics, like how many sets should I do or how many reps should I do. And I think there's almost like a gauge where you should know when you're leaving your training session if you did a good job and if you put yourself in a position to build muscle or not. And those are just details and choices you can make on how you want to set things up.
Yeah, one of my favorite words to use is reasonable. And I get a lot of questions like, what do you mean by reasonable? But I say use a reasonable volume, use reasonable rep ranges, use reasonable exercise selections. And if you're in the land of reasonable, you're okay. And like you said, you have to learn to walk out of a training session and say, I did pretty good. Like, we don't have to maximize every set every day. That's impossible. I tell people to try to be 70 or 80%, 100% of the time. And by that, I mean, go in, give what you can on any day. Understand it's a very long process. Sustainability is, an extremely important part of the process. And I don't go in every day and maximize every set. And, I maximize what I can. Sometimes on bench, I'll maximize the first set, and the second set, I'll be like, where am I? I'm just going to take this and push it for 10 reps, and then I'll come back harder on the third set. But if you mention that on the internet, someone will say you got junk volume, right? Because somehow you have to maximize every set all the time. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling a little bit.
Well, I guess this is a good point then. So why are people so obsessed with the minutia, and why are they not progressing then if it is really that simple, if you give yourself a long enough time horizon? Like, everyone should be able to make solid gains within 1 to 2 years if you're a novice or intermediate lifter, if you're generally doing things right. So why are they not doing that?
There's two major reasons. I think I made a video about this about a month ago. There's two major reasons why people don't achieve the results they want. The first reason is many people don't take their nutrition seriously enough. And when we say nutrition, they're like, I'm eating protein, I'm getting my calories, I'm eating relatively healthy. Excuse me, sorry. And that's very, very fair. But the muscle building process needs a degree of focused nutrition. It is like, it's not good enough to eat healthy. You need to put yourself in the position where you can be in a very controlled, wise, lean bulk to maximize the results. And quite honestly, you really do need to, in the lane of hard training, be hyper excited about progressive overload in the lane of hard training. I've set strength standards before, but the goal isn't to achieve the strength standards. The goal is to attack hard training, and in that lane, naturally you will get +1s or progress. So I think where most people fail is obviously consistency. Nutrition is not focused enough, and they generally don't progressively overload or train hard enough.
Yeah, I think there's 2 points that stick out there. The first is that they don't train hard enough. And the second is that you kind of need to be hyper excited. And I think that's such a missing part of things like exercise selection and volume and rep ranges. Is like, what are you hyped about doing at the gym? And you don't have to do it forever. Like, what are you hyped about doing right now? And if in 3 months you're not hyped about that rep range or that exercise or that format, you can change it. But like, what are you excited about? And because if you're excited about it and you're thinking about it and thinking about progressing on it, you're more likely to put in that effort and actually progress.
I would say, I've been around, I've had the opportunity as a content director and editor with Muscle and Strength and Tiger Fitness to be around the best of the best for my professional career. Everyone from the Hodge twins to training with Ronnie Coleman, Jerry Ward, rest in peace. Everybody you can think of, nearly everybody you can think of. And when you would meet them or you would train with them, and I've trained with a lot of them, we don't sit down and go, what rep range? We're not going to talk about rep ranges, or we're not even going to talk about training splits or optimization. I know if I walked into the gym with Jeffrey Verity Schofield or Bald Omni-Man, or any of these guys, it's going to be a fun war, right? Because I know mentally they are at the hard training level. And this can sometimes sound like you're the man on the mountaintop and you're better than people, but there is like a degree of separation. I know if I'm trained with these guys, I know what the experience is going to be like. And we don't worry about the minutia, right? It's going to be so much more art, and it's going to be a degree of brutality and pushing things. And that's the fun, I think, that you have to connect with to be successful at some level, it has to be so much more than numbers.
Yeah, and I also feel that that's a good way to start training hard is to have a good training partner like early on to actually push yourself and have fun and maybe do some forced reps and see where you're actually at. Because I think the challenge is some people train by themselves and they're just on the internet trying to find advice. And, sometimes you just have to experience it in person with other people.
Yeah, if when you see like one of the dogmatic science guys on the internet, I know they've never trained with anybody next level, because if they would, they would have a respect for the art of training, and that sounds somewhat arrogant, or like you're better than somebody, but I think it's a reasonable assessment. There's nothing wrong with the science of training, but if you have spent any time training with people that are above your level and really successful, you will understand there's so much more nuance, and you will understand there's so much more to training than structure and programs and math, and you will respect the arts a little bit in a little bit more balanced manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I've had people train with me at the gym, and then after the session, they say, like, I've never trained that hard before. And I imagine that if I trained with someone like yourself or GVS, I would feel the same way. Like there's levels to it. So the people at the gym, they're not at my level in terms of like work ethic and how hard to train. But then if I trained with someone a few levels above me, I'd feel the same way. And then I'd set a new standard as well. So I feel like there's something there.
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky. I mean, I am super blessed, and I don't like to toss around the word blessed, but I have truly been blessed with my professional career to be able to train with everybody. And it's been a while since I've been in that arena, but at one point I trained with Ronnie. At one point I trained at the gym of the strongest power lifter in the world, Donnie Thompson. I've just trained with everybody. So I've trained with so many people above my level that it was just sit down, get in the car, and go for a ride with them and see what you can learn.
Nice. So I do want to talk more about optimization. So some feedback that I've heard, I even just saw it on Basement Bodybuilding's channel recently, is like people do want specific exercises and volumes and things like that once they're at the intermediate stages and they're doing everything that we're talking about. Like they are training hard. Sometimes they do want to know, should I just stick with preacher curl because it's the way to go? So I'm curious, when do you think optimization has merit, and when does it make you cringe?
Well, you bring up a good point. You need to give people specifics. Like if you're an educator or a coach, people want specifics. Like you can't give them vaporous information, like just go train hard, right? That has no value. You have to give them a specific starting point. They want specifics. They're eager. If somebody comes to you to a counselor for dating advice or relationship advice, they don't want vaporous information. They want specifics. So we have to give them specifics, but as a coach, that is a starting point, right? This is the starting point of the learning process. When they get into the gym, one of the concepts I talk about is evolving training based on needs. What does that mean? Well, you're in the gym and you're doing barbell rows, and you find you don't like them or you don't connect. So we try pendlay rows, and you find a better connection. So you made a lateral swap. You made a reasonable change. You didn't downgrade an exercise. So we just made a reasonable swap. So you are doing 10 rep sets on pendlay rows, and you find that you pick up cardiovascular fatigue at the end. So you prefer 8 rep sets so you can focus more on your back work. So now we just progress from barbell rows of 10 rep sets to pendlay rows of 8 rep sets. And this is really the magic of training evolution. When you see an experienced or advanced lifter, whoever it happens to be, and they've been lifting for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, their program might not make sense to you, but it's been all these evolutionary steps that led them to that. And so when we talk about optimization is really starting with a reasonable foundation that works for the individuals. I have some individuals that don't like to do more than 2 sets per exercise. That's fine. I have some individuals that like to do 4 for an exercise. That's fine. So we start at the place where the individual wants to start, with the understanding that this is not where we're going to end. This is the beginning of the Lord of the Rings, and we have a 10-hour movie marathon ahead of us, right? So,
I'm so
this
excited.
this is the beginning of the quest. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Side note, I'm going to Lord of the Rings Return of the King with my friends on Sunday, where it's in a movie theater, and then there's an orchestra there playing all the music and stuff. So yeah, I'm a nerd out.
That would be a nice experience.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense that, you want to be specific early on with people, like do this exercise, do this rep range, etc. I feel like there's this, I don't know how to explain it, but I see this kind of in the business world. Like, people need specifics early on, but you have to learn that skill long term to make it an art and to figure things out on your own, or all you're going to do is like keep chasing the latest fad or the latest S tier exercise. And like, at some point you should be able to figure it out yourself. Like, how many sets should I do here? Should I use intensity techniques here? How far from failure should I go? Like, I don't know. I feel like people are trying to outsource that skill.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is grounded in that process of going from receiving a optimal starting point to becoming a master in your craft, or someone that understands the nuance of whatever they're doing, whether it's business, running a small business, being an entrepreneur, or training, is repetition, death by repetition. Program hopping, is kind of the enemy of that, because at some point you need to get into the lane and drive the car for a long period of time, right? And you need to allow the mistakes to happen. You need to allow the strains to happen. Not that we train recklessly, but you need to put in your repetitions. And from that journey, you're going to learn a lot of things. Even in the business world or in the training world, there's a million people that approach me every day with their magic closing solutions and magic apps and AI programs and whatever. And it's very easy to get distracted. But many people come to me and ask me how to be a successful online trainer. At some point, it's just about repetition, repetition, repetition. So I think that's an important part of the process.
Yeah, I've had people ask me, like, what's your, like, whatever, optimization technique for business and stuff. And I'm like, I'm tenacious and I'm resourceful and I'm a learning machine. Like, that's all it is. And because I do those things, I can figure things out and I don't get scared of things and I can solve problems. And that's it. It's not like such a tangible skill. It's just, it's more of a mentality.
Before we started the podcast, I mentioned how I appreciated your dedication to the process of podcasting. And really, when somebody wants to get good at something or successful, 90% of it is really just showing up every day and giving yourself the opportunity to learn. And I've seen so many people come and go in so many different ways, lifting podcasts and wanting to be online coaches and wanting to make a YouTube business. And they always ask me for my secret. And my only secret is I always showed up every day. And that's it. That's really the only secret I have.
I think that's a good secret. And I appreciate those kind words. It means a lot. And I think it comes back to adherence. Like, even in the podcast, I realized at some point I can't do this every week. So rather than trying to burn myself out and do it every week and then probably quit after 6 months of doing it, I said, okay, like what is a frequency I can adhere to? So it's the same thing as the gym. If you can't train 6 days a week because you're going to burn out after 4 months, like figure out how many days a week that is that you can actually sustain for the long term. And I think that's how most things are.
Yeah, you get me fired up a little bit because like when you tune into the science-based content and optimization is rooted in the practical ability or pragmatic and pragmatism. What can somebody actually do? If you have a businessman or a father who can only train every third day, optimal is how do you make that work for them, not how much volume per week per body part.
Yeah. And I've spoken with some people kind of in that science side that are super reasonable in their assessment with things like this, where they mention that like optimal is what you can adhere to and figure out what works for you. And that's very different than the clickbait, like you need to do this because there's a new meta-analysis. Do it right now. And it's like, I don't know if that's actually productive for anyone. It's just a shiny object that it's going to take them away from what they're doing now.
I don't want to ever sound like a science-based basher. What I would really like to clarify is that I believe there are two types of science-based content. One is pseudoscience that is not grounded in reality, the average grind. You have a lot of very intelligent, wise individuals out there who understand that everything really has to be modified to the individual. But there is a growing area of pseudoscience or fake science that will attach to one study and make a video and get a lot of views. And where these people are completely detached from reality, from the challenges of the average individual, and basically from the last 70 years of lifting. There was I don't mean to go down a rabbit trail, but there was an individual probably a month ago where somebody sent me his post, and it was a quote unquote science-based guy with one study. And of course, he had to have science-based in his Instagram profile to let everybody know he was one step away from Jesus. Excuse my bad reference, but he was telling everybody that before the steroid era, that every lifter was doing minimalism, like minimal sets per exercise, like Mike Menser type of training.
Mm-hmm.
His statement very boldly was everybody before the steroid era trained like that. I'm like, have you heard of Marvin Eder? Have you heard of Reg Park? Have you heard of John Grymick? Have you heard of any of these? I said, this is absolutely untrue.
Yeah, everyone. It's just such a bold statement, right? Everyone did this. It's like some people.
Right, yeah. Anyway, those are the science-based guys that are pseudoscience.
All right, fair enough. So I did have a kind of a fun question here. So I know you're someone who loves big, classic, brutal exercises. But I want to go in a different direction here. What are your Mount Rushmore, your 4 favorite isolation lifts, and why?
Do we do isolations or we do non-major dumbbell or barbell?
Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go with the second.
So let's go away from non-barbell and dumbbell for a moment. I love the seated cable row. I think it's the best cable exercise in the gym, arguably. You can get a big progression opportunity. It's very easy to cheat, but I think that's one of my favorites.
With chest support or the one with no chest support?
I prefer no chest support.
Okay.
I've done the chest support, but I just like to brace with my feet more than my chest.
Okay.
Wow. Isolation, leg extensions.
Okay.
We've all gone through periods where, someone was in the corner yelling, "You'll shoot your eye out, kid," if you do those and pick up knee injuries. I've never seen anybody get injured on them to be real. And I think they provide a lot of value, and there's a lot of fun things you can do with it. Run the rack, run the stack, and just do a brutal amount of volume without it being physically punishing.
Hmm.
And again, it has a pretty decent progression opportunity. That would be something I would brutalize. Let's see, back. We talked about back. We talked about legs. Chest. I don't really like isolation exercise. On dumbbell flies don't feel good. I don't mind pecky decky, but it's something I do at the end. I'm not super passionate about it. Cable crossovers, I think, are probably one of the worst exercises in general, not because of the exercise, but because I think a lot of the cable systems don't allow for progression to a reasonable degree.
Hmm.
So I guess we're left with a lot of arm stuff. And I have to be like alternating dumbbell curls. That's one of my favorite lifts.
Nice.
And triceps, I really like the cable tricep extensions. I think for the same reason I like leg extensions, because there's a big progression opportunity. And at the end of a workout, if you have energy, you can run the rack, run the stack, do a lot of volume, and just generally beat the living crap out of your triceps with them before you leave the gym. So I think those would be my top 4.
Awesome. Yeah, I like those. I like running the rack too, especially if I'm ever like traveling or on vacation and I don't have a lot of time in the gym. I'll just pick like a machine like that and be like, all right, we're running the rack.
Yeah, and just doing a lot of crazy fun volume and enjoying it.
Yeah, or I'll pick like a number and say, okay, can I do 8 for every weight? And then when I can't do 8, I'll go back down or something like that.
Right. That's what I do. Pretty similar.
Nice. All right, I'm gonna throw out some quotes here. Tell me your first take or your thoughts on it. First one here is, you have to almost be more disciplined on a bulk compared to a cut, because on a cut, you know the mission.
Yeah, that is extremely true. And I think it's something a lot of people don't understand. A bulk can easily slip into a fat bulk, fat gain process. And a bulk is often used as I'm bulking, I'm going to go over. In a bulk, you really need to, when I'm working with someone, we are aiming to get about 2.2 pounds per month, upwards of about 2.5 pounds per month. So we're trying to make a bulk sustainable for 4 to 5 months. And there is not room to mess around. You have to stay within a tight shot group. On a cut, you can go up the maintenance, you can slip around, you can have variance, as long as you are slowly moving forward. But if you slowly move forward on a bulk, you risk either slowing the process or not getting as much out of it as you can. So it is essential on a bulk that you take it seriously. That doesn't mean you can't have ice cream, but you really, really need to monitor the rate of gain and your daily variance.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've even had maintenance phases that just slowly turn into bulks because I start slipping on my choice of food, and then I kind of mess up my diet structure, and then I'm a little bit looser with eating out and alcohol, and then all of a sudden, like my mind switches, like, oh, I guess I'm bulking, and then that bulk gets a little bit messier over time too. If I'm locked in cutting, and there's cuts that don't go well, but if there's like I'm trying to hit this number, then there's just one metric to measure. But in a bulk, it's harder.
I will say, like, the people I know that are successful, they're very routine. Like, they're eating the same meals, not the same meal every day over and over again, but you know what they're eating, right? You know they're going to be planning. You know generally what they're going to be eating. They're very routine and they stay within a certain calorie level generally, unless it's a date night or whatever. I know the successful people. I know how they eat without even knowing how they eat.
Yeah, I feel like it's about figuring out that structure. So for me, I have like right now I think I'm maintaining on 2,700 or something like that. So I'll eat like 1,000 calories up until 2 p.m. because I train in the morning. Then I don't eat from 2 to 7, And then from 7 till the end of the night, I have like 1,700 calories. And then I kind of just rinse and repeat. But I can eat different foods within there. But that structure still needs to be somewhat consistent so it doesn't go off the rails.
Right, right. And, I'm not trying to turn people into OCD, monsters. And I don't want them to have to feel like they have to weigh everything, but there has to be some consistency. I just never seen anybody super successful with mass that was inconsistent or wasn't planning their meals, or, and they enjoy it. It's not a burden, and they don't limit themselves. They just, they like what they do. I like what I do.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about exercise selection. Pretty early on, people need to be told what to eat. So they might be told, like, you have to eat Brussels sprouts, and you're dedicated, so you'll eat Brussels sprouts. But over time, if you don't like Brussels sprouts, you need to find something that checks that vegetable box that you like, that you can fit in your diet and eat consistently. So it's the same thing. It becomes an art when early on it's like, do this meal plan, and because you're dedicated, you'll do it. But you probably won't follow that meal plan someone gave you for 20 years.
No. Whenever somebody asks me for a meal plan, I'm happy to oblige. And, with AI now, generating meal plans really couldn't be easier, as long as you have the food choices that people like. But sticking, that's, like we said, a starting point. And you have to be willing to evolve and, swap in preferences.
All right. Next one here. And this one I just thought was relatable for me as well. It says, it's important for us older guys to help the younger guys, not just with lifting, but we need to be equipping these younger men.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Where do I start with that? There's so many levels. I think equipping the next generation to see the bigger picture is important for me. Lifting will always be a battleground. Fitness will always be a battleground where we take an enjoyable process and turn it into warfare every day when we don't need to. And the biggest thing, I guess, I want to equip the next generation with is enjoyment. It's a wide highway, and I want them to be able to be free, because freedom in fitness is an important thing. To be able to be free, to know the path is wide, to choose a path you like. I mean, what embodies youth more than finding your path and finding your direction and going hard in that path and learning during that path? But I want to equip, more than anything, the younger lifter with the ability to see a bigger path and picture, and to find freedom and enjoyment and not restriction.
I feel like it's easy to see that path when you've walked the path already. But I feel like when you're young, that might be scary to know there's that much freedom, because you say, okay, what if I make the wrong decisions and I fail, when I know there's more of this, like, this person's doing this path and I could just copy them. So I feel like that's a challenge that I have communicating with people, because I can say, like, you can do whatever you want. There's a path, just follow your passion, etc. But then there is a percent of people who they're not going to really commit to it, and then they're probably going to fail, and they're going to say, why didn't I just follow a more tried and true path?
It's much harder without a coach. And I'm working with a couple guys that came to me, and they are very nervous about freedom, right? Mm-hmm. And I hate to use obsessive compulsive, but very, very afraid of stepping outside of certain areas. And part of coaching is building trust and taking steps in directions where people might not be comfortable with. They think they have to do everything in a workout or everything during the week or do things a certain way. And a big part of coaching is building a relationship with the younger guys and getting them slowly to understand you can take a deep breath, and it's a long process and you're not plateauing. and that's just relax a little.
Yeah. And I found myself in the same trap before. So I collect like basketball cards. So I got in the hobby because I thought basketball cards were cool. The more I dug into it, then I started buying all the cards that all the collectors were buying because they were the cards to buy. And then I had all these cards, and then I looked at them and I'm like, I don't think I actually like these cards. I think I bought them because if you were on the in, these were the cards to have. Like I'm kind of like trying to get credit in this like little tribe of collectors. And then I was like, I'm just like a reptile brain and I like shiny stuff. So I sold some of those cards and started buying just shiny stuff that I like. But I even found myself in that trap where it's like I got in because I collected this as kids, and now I'm almost like trying to be an elitist, being like I'm collecting these cards that the collectors collect, and so I feel like it's easy to fall in that trap as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull you down a rabbit trail. I have a similar story. I collect baseball cards, and I actually have a cabinet that my good friend made. You remember like a library card catalog cabinet where you pull out the things and the cards go in? Well, baseball cards fit perfectly in there, and so would basketball cards.
Yeah.
So I had a cabinet made, and it has 40 drawers, one for each season from 1979 forward. And I just wanted to complete each season, right? So I had a specific collection goal, and you can very easily get pulled off of that. Your specific, lifting, collecting cards, you can get pulled off of that and into somebody else's world and realize that's not why I started this. I don't enjoy this.
Yeah, I'm building out someone else's collection or some YouTuber's collection of what they think I should buy, and it's like this is a stupid hobby anyways. Like, why am I taking it so seriously? Why don't I just buy what I like, right?
I don't need all the rare cards or the super great pulls. I just want to have every card from my,
from my childhood, right? Yeah.
So you're a basketball fan. You know about the Big Three at all?
The Big Three cards?
The Big Three League, Ice Cube's league.
Yeah, I know about Ice Cube's league.
Yeah, I had the A1 seat sitting next to Ice Cube the whole day, and since
no way.
Yeah, I love basketball. I was a big basketball player.
You see my Jordan poster.
Yeah,
definitely pretty.
If it was LeBron, I might twitch a little bit, but Jordan's good.
I have respect for LeBron, and he's allowed to be the second best player of all time in my books, and that's it.
But Jordan, yeah.
All right, next one here. We are going hard until we can no longer go hard. I will run until I can't run. I will walk until I can't walk. I will crawl until I can't crawl.
That's how I'm going out, my friend. That's how I'm going out. I mean, life is about adventure, right? And seeing what you can do. That you can misconstrue what I just said is about punishing yourself, but you're going to have to degrade and downgrade and change over the years. But my attitude is I'm going to go as hard as I can, and then when I can no longer go at that level, we'll step down, and then we'll just continue. That sounds like a lot of bravado, but I enjoy living life that way. I enjoy getting up and getting every second out of every minute.
Love that. All right. So you've been in the game a long time, since the days of finding Muscle and Fitness and Flex magazine in 1986 at a small grocery store in New Mexico.
Yes.
So in your opinion, what is something that's better now about lifting, and what was something better then about lifting?
Better then was we were surrounded only by hard training. So we inherently knew what it was, right? We didn't have to be taught. There were, everywhere you turned, Lou was training hard, and Tom Platz was training hard, and Arnold was training hard, and everything was in black and white. Half of everything was in black and white, and it was in these dirty gyms, and it was just supersets and pushing and not a lot of distraction, right? You knew the message. You knew no one was saying train hard. It was just the DNA of the era.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a much better thing. It was much better. On the other hand, the modern generation has so much information that for the right individual, they can cut out a lot of the wheel spinning that someone might have done back then because there wasn't enough information to know if you were off target. Back then in 1986, 1987, if you weren't progressively overloading, and they weren't always talking about progressive overload, right? Strength wasn't really talked about in the bodybuilding world in the Weider magazines, other than the principle of progressive overload. Back then, if you were spinning your wheels, there weren't any avenues to figure out what the heck am I doing wrong. So for the self-starter, this modern era is a huge, just filled with a huge resource of wonderful tools and pieces of information. What I want to say this, as a coach, I will tell you that probably 70% of people that come to me need a lot of work on their squat and deadlift. Not a criticism, but they're much harder lifts than you can imagine. Than if you just tuned into the internet. Everybody seems to be doing them for a lot of weight. It's not the reality. On the other hand, we've never had more information on form. So there's all of this information out there, but still it always surprises me how little we use the information still.
Okay. So hard training back in the day was just it was a default. So that's what was good. And now there's information for the person that can find and use the information, but the vast majority of people still don't.
Well, yeah, I don't mean to sound like that, but I'm just trying to encourage people, man, there's so much good information out there. Find the good information and just run with it.
Yeah. I also feel like there may be some things better on the nutrition side as well, where, before you had to eat every 2 hours or something like that. And now it's kind of, we talked about kind of like the wider path. I feel like with nutrition, there's a little bit of a wider path now as well.
Oh yeah, man. When I was when I was in college, I was making my best gains of my life. I made amazing gains the first 3 years, so I'm not talking smack about what I did, but I was an OCD every 2.5 hour eater. And back then I didn't have a lot of money. So it was ramen, mac and cheese, powdered milk was my protein powder, and cans of tuna. And every 2.5 hours, I would eat a box of mac and cheese and a can of tuna, or a packet of ramen and a can of tuna. You would take powdered milk because it was a cheap way of getting an extra protein, and add in extra scoops to the point where it tastes like monkeys something, and it was just awful. Yeah. So, man, yeah, I was pretty OCD. I was OCD. When I would lay down on the couch to watch a movie, I would have to shift a little bit and make it equal on the left and right hand side. That's how it was.
All right. So, as someone who's lost over 100 pounds and had issues with binge eating, what are your thoughts on drugs like Ozempic, which can make the weight loss process easier?
I think we have tiers. So what I mean is, tier one is the red alert tier. Like, you need to get your weight off, because if you don't, you are in the category of body weight where you could pick up, not just die of a heart attack, but pick up neuropathy tomorrow,
Yeah.
related to type 2 diabetes. You're in the urgent category, where if you don't fix things ASAP, a wheel is going to fall off. And I guess that's a really bad way of saying it, but I have a cousin that doesn't have his legs, and he's not huge. So when it comes to those types of situations, I would encourage those people to seek emergency help, to because the habit change is much more harder. And if somebody has a habit change and they're in a good place and want to expedite it, and they're going to talk to their doctor about it, by all means, uh, I'm always leery about any drug naturally,
For sure.
as far as side effects, but you're an adult, make your decision, run with it, accept the consequences.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably an overall positive for most people who are wildly out of shape, as an opportunity for them to eat less food and hopefully lose that weight and be healthier and remove other issues they have. Um, I don't think everyone should take it. I don't think you want to be tied to taking a drug for life. I think there's major downsides for that. So I'm still kind of on the fence about how I feel about it. I'm still kind of feeling it out because my initial thinking is like, well, you should just work hard and not do that. But the reality is, like, a lot of people are overweight and obese and they're not going to get it together. So, is that better?
Yeah, I'm not like I have two clients taking it right now. One of them has a lot of stomach issues and is really struggling. He's losing weight, but it's like I'm a long-term side effects guy, and in this industry, there's a lot of um, overreaction to steroids. Right? I don't want to say the word, but there's
You could say
like
the word.
yeah, it's like if if someone is on TRT, all of a sudden they're going to risk major health issues. Meanwhile, they're taking all these prescription drugs they don't have any idea about. So it's a very anything you put in your body, there's going there's going to be some risk, and I'm not a big fan of putting anything into my body other than maybe
Yeah.
Advil.
Yeah, for anything, there's going to be a commercial in 10 years that said, if you took this, call this law firm and we'll be part of a settlement. Like, that's going to happen for everything.
Man, the commercials crack me up. They really do, with all the side effects. It's almost like a
It's
comedy.
half the commercial, right? And then it's at the
Yeah,
bottom.
they're showing people frolicking, sitting in like bathtubs, couples next, clinking champagne glasses. Side effects may include depression, suicide,
Everything.
bleeding anus.
All right, I'm gonna throw some pictures on the screen here. For the first one here, tell me why this person inspired you, and if you got any story here. And it's Tom Platt.
Yeah, I was I don't know why I was like always by nature a counterculture guy. I hated pop music. Uh, and there's always an appeal to someone that was seeking their own path. And in an era where everyone was worried about Arnold's chest and biceps peak, Tom was doing his own thing. And it wasn't just the legs that drew me in. It was that Tom was doing his own thing, and he was very Tom. And I respect that in anybody, really, not just Tom with his leg training.
And would you train legs with Tom?
Yeah, man, I would just love to have a conversation with Tom, because Tom was really Tom was really who I wanted to be when I grew into a big boy, and I thought I could have as much mass as him if I just trained hard enough.
That mindset goes a long way. All right, for the next one here, I got a bunch of people that you've interacted with in the past. You can talk about all of them, or you can pick a few of them. You can say nice things, you can say bad things. Just first thing that comes
Let's
to
go.
mind here.
Wow, man. Oh my goodness. Let's start at the bottom right, Bud. Man, Bud is no longer with us. I got to bend steel with Bud in a parking lot in Louisiana. What an amazing guy. He's like, come on over. We just met up in a parking lot of a YMCA. We spent the whole day bending steel and nails. And he's as sincere as you get, as real as you get. And what a legend. He the week before he passed, he was supposed to be on my podcast, and he couldn't figure out how to get the video up. Bud once listed me as one of the top trainers to watch. I just absolutely, love Bud, and I'm just sad he's gone. It's just a legend. Boy, let's go through them all, man. Paul Carter. I hired Paul Carter as a writer back in the Muscle and Strength days. He was with T Nation. I've met up with him at the Arnold. We used to get along pretty well. He used to do a lot of hardcore training. How Paul trains now is not how Paul built his base. I'm just going to say that. And, he threatened me via DM this last year. I don't know what his buddy that does the podcast. I forgot. Anyway, his buddy made a comment on social media, and I made a really intelligent, wise, non-threatening, rebuttal to a claim, just for discussion. And he banned me. He banned me on every social media platform. And then Paul came after me and threatened me. So Paul, go fuck yourself. Basement bodybuilding. I don't take bullies well. And Paul, you need to man up and, stop being a bitch. Basement bodybuilding, a lot of respect. I can't say enough good things about him. I don't get to watch his channel, but he's one of the good guys. Atlas Power Shrug, one of the good guys as well. I have a lot of respect for him. We've had some decent, and I always wish I had more conversations with him about modern science-based lifting. Natural Gallant, I had him on a podcast, and for some reason, I didn't know he had a lot of haters.
I see.
And
I didn't know that either. Okay.
I didn't know it. I didn't know it. And I posted the video on my channel of our podcast, and his haters came over one weekend and started slamming on him, and he got mad at me for allowing the comments on my page. I didn't know they were going to come there, and it happened on the weekend, and then he blocked me or whatever. So it's just a weird series of events. Sean Nalawani, absolutely nothing but respect. Sean has mentioned me on his channel before. Yeah. Me and Sean think alike, think the same in many, many ways. Bald Omni Man, he used to come on way back before he was, known. He used to comment on every one of my videos, and I appreciate his support early on. I have nothing but respect for him. He's one of the good guys. Greggy Poo. Greg better get used to all those Lambos, because drama only pays the bills for a season. Pete Rubish, me and Pete go a long way back. We competed at some of the same meets. I have nothing but respect for Pete. We're both from Wisconsin. He's always treated me with respect, and I have nothing but the highest praises for Pete. Jeffrey is the new GOAT, Jeffrey Verity. If I'm going to listen and watch anybody's video, it's going to be him, because I trust him. Mm-hmm. Not that I don't trust Bald Omni Man or Basement Bodybuilding or Atlas, but Jeffrey is the GOAT. Nothing needs to be said more than that. Alex, absolutely nothing but respect for Alex. He's like my son. I believe he used to watch a lot of my content early on. We train dissimilar but similar in a lot of ways, and I always loved his wanting to avoid drama. Hodge twins, absolutely wonderful people, smart businessmen. I've got to make videos with them. I've got to spend a lot of time with them. They're funny, but they are wise, shrewd businessmen, and they are good human beings. They really are. Bromley, I respect. I'll just leave it at that. I just looked at his channel yesterday. I hope that wasn't too long and rambling.
No, not at all. And as always, Steve, I appreciate your transparency and not being not shying away from being open and talking about things. So, and And I did want to mention one thing there. You mentioned Sean Nalawani. He's actually the first YouTuber that I really came across whose content I liked. And I bought his body transformation blueprint in 2016. And he would reply to my emails and give me feedback. And he was just such a solid dude. And I think he's that person that probably got me into YouTube fitness, because I liked his content and then I kind of spread through there. So,
Right.
you know, if you're an influencer, sometimes you don't know that, you know, you make what the lasting impact you make on people.
My wife is home, so the dogs are going to go noisy, crazy.
Oh, that's cool. My dog freaks out whenever the doorbell rings. So, all right, I got one last fun question for you. So we talked about, you know, so I worry that young men make lifting their only hobby. We just talked about baseball and basketball cards. But I also know you had an independent film review site and you played music. So tell me about your music career and the time that you shared an apartment with the Head Cleaners in Madison, Wisconsin.
How did you find out? How did you find out about that? Where did I have that hidden? That's crazy. Yeah, man, the Head Cleaners were from Madison. I shared an apartment back around age 21 with some musicians around Madison. Back then, we used to go to OK's Corral in Madison and, you know, get stoned a lot. I had a year where I got stoned a lot, and it was just, you know, it was all about music back then. I came back to music. I realized I could sing around age 46, and I don't talk about this a lot on social media, but I've been in studio like 10 times and done a lot of bad recordings, did some good recordings. Probably played, at one point I was playing 50 to 70 shows a year, and no one on YouTube had any clue. So yeah, I've given it up because, you know, you make a run at something and realize
It's not there.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I've had years like that too. I used to be involved in the hip hop music community. So when you're kind of deep in music, there's substances and stuff like that, and it's all kind of a blur. And you know, for me, that was more my college days, but it was multiple years of that.
Yeah, there's a point where you know you invest all you can in a talent, and then you realize it's a lot of time, and I'm not that good at it, and I have to, you know, just kind of use my time for other things.
Awesome. Well, Steve, always a absolute pleasure. Where can everyone find you?
On Instagram at Ben the Barman and on YouTube at Massive Iron.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man. Take care.
Thank you.